Hello, everyone, and welcome to an early week edition of Garbage Time Takes. Now, this isn't a true official podcast. This is more of a mini podcast session with me and Dennis over, there have been some very significant events in the sports world that happened over this weekend, and Dennis and I
There
had
have,
some
there have.
we sent some extensive messages in the group chat this weekend, Dennis, and you came up with the brilliant idea of why wait till Thursday when we can drop a fat episode on a Monday night, Tuesday morning. So here we are for the people. Dennis, thank you for joining me this evening. Special guest star Dennis has joined us this evening. We're very fortunate and grateful for that. Dennis, would you like to start in the college football world, the NFL world, or the MLB world? Where does your heart's desire take you?
Oh man. I think maybe let's start in the college world and work our way up. Um, you
Sure.
know, you know, I kind of need to get in the flow of the podcast before I can start ripping off takes and thoughts here. So, I'll delegate maybe the first line of topics here to you.
Okay, that's what we'll do. We'll start college football. Dennis, I want to give you some credit. Well, maybe not some credit, but here's something you can hang your hat on a little bit.
No,
I'm
no,
sure
you
you know
can't give
what's
me credit.
coming. I'm sure you know what's coming. Uh, Earlier this year, back in early, mid, late August, I made the prediction that Deion Sanders would lead the Colorado Buffaloes to a bowl eligible record of 6-6. Dennis,
Mhm.
hot, absolutely hot when I came out saying it was blasphemous, saying that there's absolutely zero chance, excuse me, that Deion Sanders would able to pull off such a feat. And through the first 4 weeks, Dennis, I know you were sweating. I know you were
It
sweating.
looked good.
The
It
national
looked good. I was definitely sweating.
the
I mean,
national media hype
anybody
was there.
Yeah, anybody in the position that I was in was definitely sweating. Colorado, they looked good. They looked very good. They looked darn near unbeatable. They played with a fire and a passion that haven't seen out of that program in, I don't know, in my lifetime, certainly. Um, and, unfortunately for them, it ended up crumbling and falling in their face. Unfortunately for them, the Pac-12 was a very, very good football conference this year. So I'll give them a little bit of credit for that. Um, but as you said, Derek,
Eh,
not bowl eligible.
yeah, not bowl eligible. Just to continue bringing it around town here, not bowl eligible. Deion Sanders was able to improve the total win total this year by a grand total of 3 games for the Colorado Buffaloes. But alas, they went 1-8, I believe, in conference play for the second consecutive year. Absolute the season of bowl eligibility basically turned on the Stanford game, and I believe me and Bob talked about that a little bit. That succeeding weekend, successive weekend, where we were like, we think the bowl dreams are cooked now that they choked that game away to Stanford, probably 4 or 5 weeks ago at this point. And you know what, Dennis? Credit to you. You were all over it. You were all over it. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime. That team was always fraudulent. There's a lot of national media hype that even though I was pulling for the bowl record, it was very clear and obvious they were an exceptionally flawed team. And while exciting, they beat a bunch of nobodies. Sorry to all the Nebraska fans out there. Incompetent quarterback play makes you nobody. But alas, Dennis, you were vindicated. You were correct, and Coach Prime could not run you amok. How's that one's got to feel good with the assortment of L's you've unfortunately been taking. At least you've got that W to hang your hat on, Dennis.
I was gonna say I feel like I really have to sort of milk this one out a bit because it's not too often that I get to sit here and gloat, especially about college football. With you and with Bobby, it's just I don't get a lot of wins in that department. You guys are
We're relentless when
admittedly
it
more
comes to.
knowledgeable and typically pretty on the ball, especially when it comes to college football. So, I don't get to take a victory lap many times. This one, I luckily am able to do that, and yeah, it feels good. It feels good to have a dub in the pocket, and you know, I I just had a feeling. I mean, it wasn't rooted in deep seated analysis, other than that Colorado has been historically
And
a
every
run football team. and that head coaching change is exciting. As flashy as it was not going to change that overnight. And maybe in a couple of years we'll be telling a different story.
Yeah. Well, Dennis, unfortunately for you, the UC Bearcats, on the other hand, absolute disaster.
Oh, we don't need to talk about that.
Did you tune
We don't
out
need to
for
talk
the
about.
Dennis? At what point in the season did you
Oh,
tune out, or have you still been locked in each and every weekend?
I wouldn't say locked in. I don't think it's fair to I don't think it's fair to dedicated fans everywhere to consider myself locked in on this season. It's kind of a disgrace to the name of being a locked in fan.
Okay, okay.
Um, I followed the game every week. I followed the games. I followed the scores. Did not sit and watch every down of this football team. It was just simply too painful. Um, I think I really tuned out. Man, I mean, the Miami loss was crushing. I mean, go all the way back to that.
We had
That
some
was
fun.
absolutely crushing.
We had some fun there, Dennis. Me and Bob did at your unfortunate expense.
Right. And I talked about this several weeks ago now. But coming out of the gates, it was a strong start. I felt good. I mean, beat up on a couple of no-name teams. Um,
I mean, Emery Jones,
just to
Dennis,
Miami,
was
and then
on
you just
fire for 2 weeks.
yeah, no. Actually, I can tell you when I tuned out because the last game that I watched in full, I'll tell you the last game I watched in full was at BYU at 10 p.m. on ESPN, and that dropped us to you lose the game to Miami in week 3, not what you wanted to see. You could tell that that was sort of a turning point in the season and seemed to indicate that things were about to go downhill fast, especially with Oklahoma coming up next, which they did. And I felt like we had competed in the Oklahoma game. And, at 2-2, I was like, the whole season's still in front of us and whatnot. And then we lose to BYU to drop to 2-3, and you could just kind of feel the air deflate out of the team. And beyond that, really, I just had little faith. And they weren't super competitive the rest of the way. I mean, losing by 32 to Oklahoma State, um, getting doubled up by West Virginia just a few weeks ago. I mean, there are multiple, double-digit losses here on the rest of the schedule down the stretch. And I think the thing to remember I think the thing to remember with Scott Satterfield is as much as I'd like to sit on here and just absolutely rip him apart, is Luke Fickell struggled in his first season. And I know that you and I have had on a different topic some discussion about head coaching decision making and head coaching changes, as it were. Maybe we can get into that towards the end of this, but I don't think that you can hang the guy out to dry just yet. Um, I don't necessarily l- I don't necessarily love what he brings to the table. I think I was even critical when we made the hire. However,
Yeah,
one season in the college,
you were relatively unimpressed with the hire, to say the least.
unimpressed is a good way to put it. You got to start somewhere, and I don't believe that you can hang a guy out to dry after one season, and at any level really. So we'll see what next year brings. Obviously, he had to deal with the transition to the Big 12, uh, and that was a tall task. It was a tall task. He wasn't up to it this year. Maybe we'll see better things next year, but unfortunately, I am not. I don't have high hopes.
Yeah. Well, Dennis, Scott Satterfield did, if I remember correctly, do a pretty good job of turning around Louisville. Had a decent amount of success there. So we'll see. We'll see. But I seem, unfortunately, Dennis, to remember you were pretty high on UC coming into this season. I remember there were more than a few head scratching games that you declared as victories for UC on their way to bowl eligibility, and then they lost to Miami of Ohio. Not the U, folks. The Miami
Not
University
the
of
U. Not
Ohio.
the U. The Red Hawks of
And
Ohio.
the bowl eligibility just fell apart, Dennis, from that point on.
Well, I can tell you this. I can tell you for a fact that I will not be making such bold predictions about the UC Bearcats going into next season. I can guarantee that. Um, just absolute confidence that I will not be making any bold assumptions about the UC Bearcats next year, unless it is uh, guesses as to their demise.
Sure, 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 sure. I don't know where you want to go from here, Dennis. There's is it time for me to gloat,
I think
Dennis?
there's a I think there's a
Is it a
natural
natural?
progression here given the topics that we've covered at this point, and I think it's time for Derek to take his victory lap.
Well, I wanna prolong it just for a second. Just for a second.
Victory mile.
I just want to prolong it for a
Victory
second.
5K. Okay.
Unfortunately, Bob isn't here, so perhaps we'll talk more about it on Thursday, assuming we run a pod on Thursday and Bob is present and accounted for. Unfortunately, tonight he's not accounted for. As a result of a academic presentation he must prepare for med school, so unfortunately he could not be with us tonight, which isn't his fault. This is, not a normal pod night. Can't plan for that, so by all means, Bob, good luck. But I will be interested Thursday to see how he feels about Michigan State cleaning house, just absolutely wiping everybody off the face of the earth, and bringing in Oregon State former Oregon State head coach Jonathan Smith, not to be in no relation to the legend John L. Smith, whom me and Bob quote quite often on this podcast. For the kids, as John L. Smith used to love to say. No relation, Jonathan C. Smith to John L. Smith. No relation, unfortunately. But I'll be interested to see how Bob feels about the hire. Obviously, with the uncertainty for the Pac 2 going forward, seems like a good fit for Jonathan Smith, at least, to come over to the Big Ten. And I'll be interested to see what he does. Oregon State sort of forced its way to respectability this year when DJ Uyunglele found his way to Oregon State after leaving Clemson, and we'll be interested to see, what the transfer portal situation looks like. Sent it in the group chat earlier today. MSU savior Caden Hauser is gone. Another offensive lineman also entered the portal today. I think Spencer Brown was his name, but I'm not entirely sure. Regardless, something to monitor moving forward will be the Michigan State Spartan program, who comes in, who goes out, and I'll be interested to see Thursday, sort of what Bob's take on all that is. Unfortunately, no bowl eligibility for the Spartans this year. I do not remember if Bob predicted bowl eligibility for the Spartans. I don't believe I did. That team was garbage, Dennis. Oh, I'd be very interested.
He
I'd be very interested to see if Michigan State and UC played, who would win this year. I think that would be a very entertaining game of football, perhaps.
that would be pretty entertaining. For all the wrong reasons. I don't remember exactly. I kind of want to say that Bobby did not predict bowl
He
eligibility. I
might
think
not
he was
have.
sort of pessimistic.
He might not have. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I feel like he really wanted them to get at least 6 wins, though. But we'll see. We'll find out Thursday, and we'll get our answers then. But now I'll take my victory lap. Thank you very much. And the last pod, I said that Ryan Day was loser of the week. Dennis, I'm sure even though you weren't here for the pod, you watched the pod back. And I was pretty clear that I felt Ryan Day was loser of the week because if he were to lose to an interim head coach, not even Jim Harbaugh himself, but an interim head coach, and to the University of Michigan program for the third straight year, that they were going to want his head, and it would be an exceptionally embarrassing loss. I also think I made the point that with sort of the changing landscape of the NCAA moving forward, college football playoff expansion, this past Saturday's game, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, was the single most important regular season Michigan Ohio State football game in college football history. There will never be a more important game with so much on the line than that one, because with the expansion to 12 teams in the CFP, barring catastrophic downturns for one or the other program, both of those teams, that game isn't going to determine the CFP for them. The Big Ten championship, sure. But when ultimate goal is a national championship, that game is not going to be an elimination game from here on out. So not only, Dennis, not only did Ryan Day lose to an interim head coach, not only did he lose for the third straight year, but he lost what may be the single most important game in the rivalry's history, and Jim Harbaugh wasn't even on the sidelines, Dennis. He also is 1-6 versus what, top 5 opponents, I believe, top 10 opponents. I don't remember the exact stat. Regardless, he has not won a top 5 game without Urban Meyer's players, Dennis. Not a single top 5 game. He's not won a single game of significance without Urban Meyer's players. And with all of the allegations, Dennis, surrounding the University of Michigan football program regarding allegations of cheating that I still stand against very firmly, having to fire the alleged world's greatest sign stealer of all time, a true mega mind master brain who
Well,
was
the
so
world's alleged greatest science stealer of all time,
who
both
was
single-handedly making some sort of admittance here while also bragging. I love it. Go ahead.
I mean, Dennis, also I've heard on social media is that, University of Michigan football program could never have gotten so good without Connor Stallions. And, I'm not sure why programs left and right aren't begging to hire this guy since he's apparently good for 21 points worth of margin of victory from everything I've heard and seen. But I digress. With everything surrounding the program, Dennis, this win was 3 wins because everybody has jumped down our throat and said you couldn't have beaten Ohio State without cheating the last 2 years. You couldn't have done it. There's no explanation other than you could have than that you cheated. Add that on top of the excuses that C.J. Stroud had the flu and that it was too cold and snowing in 2021. They had to have been cheating, Dennis, and that's the only reason they won. Dennis, can you remind the people what happened this past Saturday with no Connor Stallions, no Jim Harbaugh, no sign stealing? Can you inform the people what happened on the field by chance?
The University of Michigan got it done.
They got it done, Dennis. They got it
They got
done.
it done.
They got it done. In the face of adversity that many will argue was self created, self inflicted, I don't really care. Uh, they won, Dennis. And they've basically, in my opinion, and I'm sure the opinion of anyone with a brain, have essentially vindicated the past 2 seasons. Because you took away Harbaugh, you took away the guy who apparently is, like I said, greatest sign stealer of all time, couldn't have done it without him. You took him away, Dennis. You took him away, and it still didn't matter. And Sharon Moore, the greatest interim head coach in college football history, got the job done. I remember, Dennis, it wasn't too long ago when Jim Tressel was fired, and none other than Luke Fickell took over as the interim head coach for the Ohio State Buckeyes football program. And you know what happened that year? If it wasn't for that win by the Michigan football program, they would have lost 17 straight games to Ohio State. So thank you, Luke Fickell, for your donation to the Michigan football program and not letting us lose 17 straight games. But when the shoe was on the other foot, Dennis, the shoe was on the other foot, and Michigan had an interim head coach, and Ohio State with all of its 5 stars, all of its 4 stars, Ryan Day, Marvin Harrison Jr., the greatest wide receiver core in the history of college football. And you know what happened, Dennis? Can you remind the people once again what happened?
They lost.
They
They
lost.
lost.
They lost.
They lost.
They lost. It feels good, Dennis. It feels good. And I'll say, if I said it once, I'll say it again. I'll say it a million times. Single most important win in the rivalry's history. And from this day forward, forever and ever, Ryan Day will have lost to an interim head coach. With everything on the line for the college football playoff, for conference championships, for all of the, you know, self-perceived disrespect that the Ohio State football program victimizes themselves with. They have yet to. Dennis, do you remember when Ryan Day said he was going to hang 100 on us? Do you remember that?
Of course.
Do you want to take a guess as to how many points combined Ohio State has scored over the past 3 iterations of the game?
The last three.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Since that
Uh,
proclamation was made?
65.
Very close. Good guess. 74, Dennis. 74.
Okay.
So since his proclamation of hanging 100 on us, he has yet to score 100 combined points in 3 games since. Um, we planted our flag at Ohio State's midfield last year after the win, Dennis. We planted our flag and said, "You guys are trash," and they still didn't have an answer. They still didn't have an answer. So Gene Smith, Ohio State AD, screw ya. Ryan Day, screw ya. Ohio State, screw ya. And most important of all, Dennis, this coming Saturday, when the Michigan Wolverines repeat for the third time as Big Ten championship winners, the man who started it all with a bogus investigation, bowing down to the cowardly mob, Big Ten AD or Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti is going to have to hand the Big Ten championship trophy to Jim Harbaugh, Dennis. He's going to have to hand it to him. He's going to have to look him in the eyes and say, "Congratulations, Coach Harbaugh, on winning the Big Ten championship." And he's going to have to come face to face with the man that he suspended for literally no reason other than to try to undermine the University of Michigan football program season. He tried to let Penn State fix his problem. They couldn't do it. Maryland couldn't fix his problem. Ohio State couldn't fix his problem. And now he's got no one left to save him except the Iowa Hawkeyes
One
and
man
their
left.
NCAA worst offense. Now, Iowa has the chance, as they say on the internet, to do the funniest thing ever and win this Saturday. When there's, those guys, they play football too. They don't get paid to play football, not all of them anyway. But Dennis, I very much look forward to Tony Petitti, the coward that he is, having to hand Jim Harbaugh the Big Ten championship trophy. And unfortunately, because Jim Harbaugh is a man of respect, is a man of class, integrity, honor, uh, humility, he won't say anything to him. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to see Jim Harbaugh give Tony Petitti the big old DX chop. As much as I'd like to see it, he's not going to do it because he has too much class, too much respect, too much pride, too much humility to do such a thing. But believe me when I say it, Dennis, I've never felt so good about being a Michigan football fan. Never felt so good. And unfortunately, Dennis, as much as I would have loved for you to join me in the excitement by winning yourself a free Skyline chili dinner, and unfortunately you backed out of it for reasons I've yet to understand. I'm happy you're at least here with me to enjoy the ride as it currently stands.
Yeah, it was just absolute blunder on my end. Shane Rose, if you're listening to this, you know that you owe me a Skyline chili in spirit, even if a deal wasn't done. Um,
I agree. Pay up.
Enhance, you know you owe me. You know that you're a bum. Uh, um, Derek, I think you outlined that really well. A well run victory lap, as I must say. I was thinking about this as you were talking. If you think back, and our diehard listeners, our really dedicated listeners here will remember this from way back in the year 2019, 4 years ago, the first season of this podcast, the first season of this endeavor that we find ourselves on. I specifically remember after Derek Rezio's Michigan Wolverines lost this football game, the statement was made that the game simply means more to Ohio State than it does to Michigan. It simply means more. They have a countdown from the day after the
Correct.
Michigan game all the way until it happens again the next year in the locker room. It simply means everything to them, and it just did not mean everything to Michigan Wolverines. Has that tide turned finally? Does it finally mean as much or more to the Michigan program, or is it simply just a reflection of talent and recruiting? and maybe coaching, you could say. Is that the difference, or is it a culture difference that you've seen within Michigan?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. And certainly probably all of those things you just mentioned to an extent. So I'll sort of lay out how I feel the rivalry has sort of changed and why. So like you said, 2019, I still stand by that, and I still think that was an accurate reflection that the guys on the team, it may have been important to the coaches, but I don't think it meant everything to the coaches in the team. Um, Granted, I mean, Urban Meyer is unquestionably probably a top 5 college football head coach of all time. You know, scandals aside, I still think he got away with paying players, but that's just my own personal opinion. Uh, that dude knew how to coach, and he most importantly knew how to set the importance of the Michigan game every year. You could tell every time Ohio State took the field against us that they went out expecting to win, and they played with more intensity, more precision, better execution than we ever did. Save for the 2016 year, the JT was short year. Outside of that year, Michigan looked basically overmatched and underprepared every single time. And I don't know when exactly the Beat Ohio drill was instituted. I want to say it was after the COVID year when Harbaugh made a very significant concerted effort to really start focusing on Ohio State every single day. That was around that time we saw the "What are you doing to beat Ohio State today?" That started popping up in Schembechler Hall around 2021. Uh, and so I think that was part of it, yes, that uh, following the 2020 season, a lot of me guys got replaced by a lot of we guys. So guys like Cade McNamara respect everything he did for the program, even though I don't really care for how he left the program. I'll always remember the "what happens if we win out" speech. I'll always remember that. I'll always, remember when JJ McCarthy came into the program 2021. Him and a couple other guys were like, "We've never lost to Ohio State. We don't the only thing we've ever known is not losing to Ohio State because, factually correctly, they hadn't lost to Ohio State, that incoming class." And so that was a big portion, was finally getting a quarterback, Dennis, because let's not, I mean, do we really need to go through the list of Michigan quarterbacks? I'll do it for us anyway. Jake Rudock, massive respect to Jake Rudock coming in as a grad transfer, Jim Harbaugh's first year in 2014. He did some pretty good things for us. Always respect his contributions. Then we went to Wilton Speight, and Wilton Speight was a pretty darn good quarterback. He ended up getting hurt in the Iowa game. I see, Michigan was number 3 at the time. At night, Kinnick Stadium, Wilton Speight gets hurt. Iowa walks us off. And he was pretty much never the same from that point on. Then you get into Jimmy Crack Corn, as Bobby Epler's mom would like to say, John O'Corn, the John O'Corn era, when Michigan actually had a chance, I believe in 2015 or 2017, I don't remember the season. 2017, the 2017 season, Michigan had a chance to win it at the end. He threw a pick. Just an absolutely terrible pick, one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. And we had to deal with the John O'Corn era. Then we had the Shea Patterson era, which, as sort of up and down roller coastery it was, he was never good enough to beat Ohio State. Then you had the Brandon Peters, Dylan McCaffrey, Joe Milton era, which was an absolute nightmare that ultimately culminated in 2020 with the game not being played. Not and I believe in hindsight we can now say that Michigan probably would have won that game considering we've won 3 in a row. I mean, why the heck not, Dennis? Why the heck not? Uh, but yeah, so bringing in the 2021 class was a huge part of it. Putting Ohio State at the forefront of the program's, goals for every year in 2021 was a big component. And maybe the biggest component of them all was firing Don Brown. Finally relieving Don Brown of his duties as defensive coordinator was massive for the program. Brought in Mike McDonald, who turned around the program in a year. Jesse Minter has carried it ever since. But really, you can point to those three things: culture, team composition, especially that 2021 class. And now we're here in 2023 where every single member of the Michigan football program has a winning record against Ohio State. Even the fifth year seniors, now 3-2. Some of the guys that remember some of the real shellackings that we took at the hands of Ohio State are going to leave with the winning record in the book. So, yeah, I think you laid it out well that it was a combination of all of those components. But I think one number one, culture. Number two, quarterback. Number three, Don Brown. And number four, Urban Meyer leaving. Because
Mm-hmm.
his teams were his teams were crazy, Dennis. They were crazy good. Um, and once Ryan Day's recruits came in and Urban Meyer's recruits left, we haven't lost since. Haven't lost since. Ohio State hasn't won a college football playoff game without Urban Meyer's recruits. Haven't won a Big Ten championship without Urban Meyer's recruits. Haven't beat Michigan without Urban Meyer's recruits. That's all there is to it, Dennis. That's all there is to it. But I believe I can now officially say, and it goes for MSU too, Dennis. It goes for MSU too. Because I believe in 2019, I said the same thing where I didn't think Michigan State mattered enough to the program either. And even though they ended up losing 2020 because COVID was weird, in 2021 when it was the Kenneth Walker show, I believe they've made Michigan State a massive priority now as well. So I think ultimately, yeah, I think ultimately culture was the biggest determinant out of everything. And it finally means as much to them as it does to me, which is very fun.
Well, the results seem to indicate that, so I think that you've outlined it quite well. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now we'll switch gears, Dennis. Unfortunately for you, we'll go from my. I was fired up Saturday. Didn't quite get as fired up now, just because the adrenaline of the actual game has worn off by now. The excitement hasn't, but the adrenaline has.
As it does.
We'll go from my elatement to your dejection, Dennis. The Cincinnati Bengals season is unfortunately over, and the Cincinnati Bengals game.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The Cincinnati Bengals season is over. Uh, Joe Burrow done for the year. And if I remember correctly, it was the Cincinnati Bengals loss that sort of prompted you to want to have a discussion today about certain events that transpired over the weekend. You seem to take a bit of umbrage with me saying the Bengals season is over, Dennis, so I'll leave the floor to you. Uh, Give us the rundown, Dennis. Where are you at? How are you feeling?
Here's the thing. Sunday was brutal. I think I got to start there. Um, no, exactly the lack of pro reps out of Jake Browning. I mean, he came in the second half against Baltimore, was put in a pretty tough situation against a good defense, and it looked like he was put in a tough situation against a good defense. But with a whole week of preparation, um, obviously a Pittsburgh Steelers team that's performed well and has another good defense. Um, but to this point, not a great offense. You expected to be in a close game. You expected to be in a game that you could potentially win, which we were. At the end of the day, did it look good? No. Did Jake Browning look good? He's not Joe Burrow, okay? I mean, and nobody expected him to be Joe Burrow. No one said he was going to be Joe Burrow. He's a backup quarterback and an average backup quarterback at best. Um, I will say this about his performance on Sunday. He really made one mistake. If we're being, there was a colorway with over the course of the game. The one mistake on the drive coming out of halftime, we drive all the way down the field. We're in the red zone, up 7-3, about to put more points on the board, hopefully another touchdown. And he throws just a point blank pick that ends up turning into 7 for Pittsburgh on the ensuing drive. and that changes the entire complexion of the game. Just the entire complexion of the game gets changed in that moment, and he knew it. You could tell on his face when you watch that game, when you watch the play, he immediately knew it. Um, is that a mistake that Joe Burrow makes? Probably not. It was a pretty bad read by Jake Browning, and unfortunately for us, it was the difference in a very defensive, low scoring, grinded out AFC North football kind of game. As far as the rest of the season goes, um, does it look bleak without Joe Burrow? Yes. Does it look bleak when you look at the schedule ahead of us? Yes. Are we going to win the AFC North or have a chance to? No. All that being said, we're one game out of the wild card there. We're one game. I mean, one game with six to play, 6.5 weeks to play, with some teams still having a bye. I mean, I've seen crazier things happen. It's not a mathematical impossibility. I think that this team still has enough talent with Jamar Chase. Don't forget T. Higgins is coming back. Um, Joe Mixon, the defense, and Big Lou, as we would say, is still, I think, formidable. I mean, everyone's making such a big deal about Pittsburgh going over 400 yards, blah 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 blah.
It is a big deal, Dennis. First time in 58 games, Dennis, that they went over 400 yards.
But
58
they
games.
stay long, right? But do yards win football games or do points win football games?
Well, they seem to have both this past Sunday.
16. They had 16 points.
That's Dennis. How many offensive points did the Bengals score? How many you lagged?
It was 16-10. We scored all of our points on offense.
Dennis, let's play a game, shall we? Let's play a game.
Go ahead, and then I'll come back to my thoughts on the
Sure,
game.
sure, sure. Let's play a quick game. We're going to play win or loss Cincinnati Bengals edition, where I give you the game and you tell me win or loss. Are you ready?
I mean, I mean, here's the thing. If I'm being honest, I'm gonna have to give us more losses than wins. But all I'm trying to point out, and we can go through the exercise if you want. We can
Yes,
go through the exercise. That's fine.
let's go through the exercise, Dennis. So, like
Okay.
you said, one game back of a playoff spot at the current moment. A lot of teams got a lot of football left to be played. Let's go through the exercise, Dennis. Next Monday night at Jacksonville, win or loss.
No, I think it's a turning point if it's a win, but it's gonna probably be a loss
Okay.
based on what I know currently.
At home against Indianapolis.
That's 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 a win with this team. I'm sorry. It's a win. It's Gardner Minshew. Um, and I know that that is currently sitting in that seventh spot in the AFC, but I just cannot accept a loss to the Indianapolis Colts. I'm
It's a
sorry.
that's a
That's a win.
big game, Dennis. Big game. Could be the determining factor for whether or not the Bengals miraculously make the playoffs. At home against Minnesota the following week.
I just watched Josh Dobbs throw 5 picks. Give me a win.
I'm gonna agree with you there on that one, Dennis. Not only out of principle, because of the Lions situation in the NFC North, but also because I believe the Vikings are trash, and if they don't have Justin Jefferson, you guys are gonna be fine. Even Jake Browning, I think, can score 10 points on Minnesota. At Pittsburgh.
It's big. It's big. Unfortunately, I saw last week, and what I man, I think I've got to go loss. The only thing that we could have going for us here is look at, I mean, people have been pointing out Pittsburgh's schedule down the stretch. They've got Arizona, they've got the Patriots, they've got they've got a very weak schedule down the stretch. This team might win 11 games.
Which is
However,
sick.
at home, at home with us could be a trap. Just saying.
Okay,
Just saying. Could be a trap.
Pittsburgh Steelers trap game is the Bengals. I like the thought process, Dennis. I like the thought process.
Be a
Uh,
trap, but we'll go loss.
the following Sunday afternoon,
Kansas City, that's a loss.
and at home against the Cleveland Browns, who seem to have your number, regardless of whether Joe Burrow
Wild
is
card
playing or
berth
not.
on the line. with 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 wild card berth on the line. Um, no, I mean the probably not wild card berth on the line, but get it done, dang it. Give it to me. Give it to me.
so
Give me the Cincinnati Bengals
so you've got them going 3-3 down the stretch, is what it sounds
for eight
like.
and nine.
Um,
Yeah.
is 8-9 gonna get it done, Dennis?
No, 8 and 9 doesn't get it done, but it gives you hope. It
Sure.
gives you something.
You know what it does, Dennis? It puts you on the in the hunt graphic. It puts you on the in the hunt
Right.
graphic. And
Which we still are, dang it.
can you ask for anything more than that, than being on the in the hunt graphic? I remember that being something I was very big on the Lions last year down the stretch when I was like, it just feels good to be on the in the hunt graphic in late December.
It does. It absolutely does. And I mean, I remember that feeling before the success the last couple of seasons with Joe Burrow. I mean, just being back on the graphic after it being so long of not being on the graphic is a big deal. Is a big deal. And that's really all I'm hoping for. That's really all I can root for. If we're on that graphic, if we're considered alive here in a month, that's a win. That's a massive win for this franchise. It's a massive win for Jake Browning, but it's a massive win for Zach Taylor. I think I've pointed this out, maybe not to you guys directly, actually, but I've been talking to people about this. You guys, you and Bobby especially love to rag on Zach Taylor.
I love it. I
And
love it.
what do I usually do? What do I usually do? Usually I sit here, Derek, and I sit here and I defend him. I defend him to no end,
Till you're blue
and
in the
sometimes
face,
without
Dennis.
justification. Now, here's the thing. Before this week, I was proclaiming to everybody I know, we're going to find this last 7 games a lot about Zach Taylor because you can still put together a solid game plan and play competitive football games with this roster without Joe Burrow, unless you are completely being carried by Joe Burrow, which a lot of people would say is the truth. Now, I got to admit, he's not off to a good start. I had faith. I had faith in Zach Taylor to put together good game plans, and hopefully he will. But he's catching a lot of heat from the media here in Cincinnati, from the fans here in Cincinnati, for a lack of emphasis on the run game, putting too much on Jake Browning's shoulders, throwing the ball too much, and quite frankly, just not utilizing the personnel at his disposal effectively. I agree with some of that. I don't agree with all that. There's a lot of situational aspects that come into the game. I think that the game plan was centered around let's do everything we can to, except for when we leave him unblocked, reduce the impact of TJ Watt.
Here's a
And
quick question, Dennis. Quick question. Sorry to cut you off, but it's something I've been seeing. I've been seeing a lot of it on Twitter, probably over the past 3 or 4 weeks. TJ Watt, dirty player, yes or no?
dirty, no. And the reason I say no is because I've seen dirty players, both unfortunately on Cincinnati Bengals teams. Yes, I'm looking at you, Vontez Perfect. Pac-Man Jones. Yes, I'm looking at you. Um, Also on the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's there's been dirty players and obviously throughout the NFL. TJ Watt is, I would say,
A pest?
yes, definitely a pest. He's very good. I don't think anyone's going to refute that. I don't think he's dirty. I think he um probably gets away with a little more celebration than I'd like to see in the game, a little more gloating, but you know, he's good, so I guess he gets to do some of that kind of stuff. But I think there's a fine line there between dirty and between dirty and obnoxious. I guess I would call him an obnoxious player,
Okay.
but not dirty.
Okay. I just didn't know some Cincinnati fans took umbrage with the late hit he had on Jake Browning coming in from behind. That one was one of those plays where it seems like he's pushing the boundaries. And then last week against the Browns, when he sort of like kind of gator rolled the Cleveland Browns offensive lineman's leg, just sort of a
Yeah,
weird play. I don't know. It wasn't something that really stuck out to me before, where I was like, T.J. Watt, dirty player, but he's getting there. He's not Kareem Jackson yet. I
he
mean,
is getting there.
Kareem Jackson is an unhinged lunatic on the football field, but it feels like he's dipping his toe more and more and more into the gray area of dirtiness.
That I would have to 100% wholeheartedly agree with. And as you mentioned, the late hit there, completely unnecessary. And that brings me to a great point, which I glossed over earlier in my recounting of this football game. The referees, Derek. I'm not one who tends to try to point the finger at the referees. I will, I certainly will,
I
especially
do.
when I feel like I've been I've been jived. And on Sunday I felt jived. And I called it out in the group chat. I don't know if either of you guys were watching the game, but on the one Pittsburgh Steelers touchdown that iced the game, more or less iced the game there. Najee Harris breaks one of the outside, just a point blank hold on Darnell Washington on the outside. He's got Pratt around the shoulder pads, not letting him go. I mean, his back is to the runner and he's still being blocked. His back is to the runner and he's still being blocked. Tell me how that works. They throw the flag. They throw the flag, Derek, and then they pick it up. They say there was no penalty on the play for holding. Zach Taylor's asked about it after the football game. He says they told me that the one official saw the hold, the other one came in and overruled him and said there was no hold. So they picked up the flag. Tell me how that works in the NFL. Come on. I mean, we're not talking about, in the scrum, in the pile, it's anything can kind of happen and you get away with stuff. We're in open field out to the left sideline, and we just missing point blank holds that completely changed the complexion of the game. I mean, it would have been brought back 10 yards, take the touchdown off the board. Who knows what happens? Maybe they score anyway, but that's just such a big moment to pick up that flag. I just don't get it. I just don't get it.
Dennis, would you go as far as to say that perhaps the game was rigged?
Eric. It certainly felt like somebody, you know,
Had some
had
ulterior
Mike Tomlin in
motive?
mind.
Yeah, the overruling official maybe have some more skin in the game, Dennis.
I mean, I might have to play the skit, the Key and Peele skit on officiating. We got some fantasy implications, we got some betting implications. I don't know. I mean, we might need an investigation.
We might need it. Dennis, I will say across the board this year, officiating has been terrible. I don't think it's any secret that officiating has always kind of been hit or miss. But usually it's within, the scope of a singular game where the officiating is hit or miss. But it seems week in, week out, Dennis, that every game is poorly officiated across the league. And even more so in primetime games. It feels like you could always count on the primetime games, Dennis, to have the best officiating crew where you sort of let the guys play when it matters most, but ultimately you don't miss obvious flags. You because ultimately you want to have the best product for entertainment purposes that you can have, and so you put the best officiating crew out there, yada yada yada. But it feels like really um ever since the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl to me felt poorly officiated. Not even, with the no call, the pass interference, or was it called pass interference? I don't even remember at this point. But regardless of what the caller call wasn't, it really feels like dating all the way back to then, that officiating has just been a complete downward spiral. And I'm a person who, for the most part, does like to complain about officiating. Probably because I've been, Pavlovian conditioned to hate officials because of all the bull jive they've done to Detroit sports teams. But this year, more than any, it feels like officiating is at an all-time low not seen since the replacement officials back in the days of the
Mm.
officiating lockout. It feels like we're reaching those levels again, Dennis, and I don't know if you feel the same way. Just across the board.
Yeah, it's been rough. I agree. And that was, that's something else I wanted to bring up actually about the specific game was I know that, Stu, if any listen to this, probably not. And say, well, Deontay Johnson had a touchdown that they ruled incomplete. I don't know if you saw that clip or if you had a chance to see that play. Could somebody explain to me when and then they bring in Gene Steratore too, and he's agreeing that this is a touchdown essentially. Can someone explain to me when you don't have to survive the ground anymore?
Yeah, I
I mean
didn't see
that was the whole reason that it was.
I
Okay.
I didn't see the clip,
And
so
anyway,
I can't really chime in. But I don't know. I'll try and look it up, and you can continue talking, Dennis, and I'll see if I can find it.
right, Deontay he makes the catch in the back of the end zone, makes the grab. He's got 2 feet in bounds. He's brought to the ground in the back of the end zone. He hits the ground. The ball pops out. And as far as I've known, one of the things that screwed the Cincinnati Bengals over more than anything is surviving the ground on a touchdown catch. And he clearly and obviously doesn't do that. Yet we had arguments being made that it was a touchdown and that you don't have to survive the ground in that situation, whatever that situation was. And I didn't fully understand um, why people were making that argument. The other thing, just for Steelers fans out there, that is something that could have been reviewed. I mean, if you truly thought that, Mike Tomlin could have thrown the challenge flag. He could have had it looked at and overturned, and he did nothing about it. So clearly, everyone on the Pittsburgh sideline agreed that that was not a touchdown. But I digress on that point, and we can move on from there. But I agree with you to circle back that the officiating in the NFL this year has been rather rough, and I feel like it's also not even just tolerated, but sort of accepted at a level that it hasn't been before. I mean, I don't know. I'm just based on the commentary, maybe not from the fan bases, but based on the commentary during the games, it's just like, oh yeah, that was a bad call. Yeah, they clearly missed that, and it's sort of nonchalant and just accepted, which is really unfortunate because this kind of stuff changes the outcome of games, and it should be decided by the players in the field.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like it goes, all the way back to week 1, Lions Chiefs, when Jawan Johnson
Right.
was just flagrantly false starting, and everyone's like, "What is going on?" Um, I've still yet to find the drop touchdown clip, unfortunately. Uh, I thought you were going to bring up Deontay Johnson
Well, we get to. We can talk
just
about that too.
just walking away from the fumble. Uh, just absolutely. I don't know if you saw afterwards, Dennis. He claimed he didn't see it, even though it looks like he looks directly at it. And then even once the fumble is recovered, he doesn't even start running after everyone. He just kind of looks at everyone like, it's not my problem. Uh, your thoughts on Deontay Johnson and that particular play, Dennis?
Just It's just unacceptable. I mean, it's funny to me. I can sit here and laugh at it. If I was a Steelers fan, I'd be irate. I mean, that's just quite simply not acceptable. I don't care if you saw it or not. You clearly see the guy in orange and black running the other direction, and so at that point, you at least have to react. If you don't make the play, you don't make the play. You have to react and like you care. At least pretend like you care. I think I would be very very disappointed um, if that was a player on my roster. And I don't know. I mean, you had the whole dust up before the game with
Minka.
him and Minka Fitzpatrick. I don't know exactly what that was about or if it came out what that was about exactly. I think maybe it has something to do with the situation surrounding Matt Canada and the changes to the offense, blah 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 blah. Either way you slice it, and it's funny to me. It's just it was so nonchalant.
Yeah, so I did see the Deontay Johnson drop TD. That is 100% a drop. If that happened, in like the middle of the field, that would like be an incomplete pass, every day and twice on Sunday, as Bobby Epler likes to say. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure what Gene Steratore talking about because I
Thank
don't
you.
know. Was he the head ref for the Calvin Johnson game? I don't know for sure. But if Calvin Johnson's wasn't a catch, that most definitely was not a catch. Pretty.
Thank you.
That's I'm actually very disappointed in Gene Steratore for thinking that's a catch because I think he's probably the best TV ref there is and probably one of the greatest refs of all time. So that's disappointing that he thought that was.
I agree too. I was actually going to point that I don't want to completely throw flames here on Gene Steratore because I agree that in general he's rather good. And I would say the best TV ref. However, I just don't understand where that was coming from. I He seemed to agree that it should have been a touchdown. We had Ian Eagle and announcer's name. They were both agreeing that it was a touchdown, and I was just sitting there absolutely dumbfounded that I was listening to this because you have to survive the ground. If they change that rule, somebody let me know because I would like Jermaine Gresham's touchdown back. I'd like AJ Green's touchdown back, and probably about five other ones I can't think of off the top of my head. And I'm sure you'd like Calvin Johnson's back.
Most definitely, yeah, yeah. I'm surprised. I'm surprised that they would have tried to argue that was a catch, considering surviving the ground is quite literally one of the most fundamental, rulings of a catch these days. Um, but yeah, yeah. Oh, which reminds me, Ohio State fans, screw ya. Roman Wilson's catch was a touchdown. So you can quit crying and complaining and whining that it wasn't a touchdown and that you were robbed. He had it pinned to his shoulder for like all of 6 steps into the end zone before it was yanked out of his arms after he was already 3 steps in the end zone. So, Joel Klatt, shut up. You don't know ball. And everyone else can suck it too. Screw you all. Last thing I wanted to talk about, Dennis. Last thing. 2 weeks ago, or the last pod, whichever way you want to look at it, I declared the Chicago Cubs the new kings of the NL Central. And you had some rather choice words via Bobby Epler about how you felt about Craig Counsell as a manager. And I said that if Craig Counsell was the manager of the Reds, you most definitely would not have been saying those words. So, Dennis, I would like to give you a chance to perhaps clarify your comments, perhaps retract particular specific comments. Uh, Dennis, I know you don't really think that Craig Counsell's overrated. I think you were letting the emotions get the best of you,
No,
but
I don't
I'll.
think I think wait. I think that I think Bobby may have been just some inciting some chaos here. I don't
Was
remember
Bob
specifically saying
instigating?
that Craig Counsell was. I think we might have had some instigation going on. I mean, as I recall, and sad we don't have him on here to correct me and you know sort this out.
Tune in Thursday, people.
But maybe we'll be able to do it on Thursday. Right. I remember saying that I was surprised that Milwaukee let Craig Counsell go, because he's had quite a bit of success. I think that of all the managers, at least that I've paid attention to and followed, he actually has solid bullpen management, which makes for a really good manager, and usually you don't get that, aka David Bell.
And David Ross.
Um, and David and back basically every manager that the Reds have had since Dusty Baker. Um, I was I don't think that he's a bum. I was surprised that Milwaukee let him go, and perhaps a little upset that Chicago hired him, because I do think that it improves your team as a whole. I think it's a good hire, and that it made a lot of sense. I don't understand what Milwaukee is doing, but it's fine by me.
I tell you what, Dennis. Thursday is going to be very interesting because I specifically remember Bob saying that you said you felt that he was overrated to some sort of extent, and that got me all fired up and had me spouting. So perhaps Bob was instigating for the sake of
Maybe there was some
instigation.
instigation.
Well, we'll have to check the tapes. Check the
This could
tapes.
have been. I mean, definitely check the tapes. Maybe there's a saved chat somewhere for visual proof. I don't know. This could have been a classic Bobby Epler, inciting some violence at the expense of his good friend Dennis Weaver, who was unable to attend for the fifth straight week, and just wanted to smite me a little bit and get you fired up at the same time. I mean, really a win-win for Bobby here.
Perhaps it was. We'll find out Thursday, Dennis. We need you there Thursday. The people need you there Thursday. The people need to tune in Thursday,
We're gonna
uh,
try. We're gonna
because
try.
we're gonna have to wrap up the saga. The other thing I wanted to talk about, Dennis, was the St. Louis Cardinals and their efforts to build a starting rotation, and I believe they finally made a good move in signing Sonny Gray, Dennis. So they've now added Sonny Gray, Kyle Gibson, and Lance Lynn, bullpen throwing extraordinaire Lance Lynn, might I add. For all the clowning we had done the St. Louis Cardinals, I didn't really have an option to clown this time. And I, for one,
Well, but they're good signings. They're
I,
good signings.
I, for one, am upset that Sonny Gray is in a Cardinals uniform. And I'm sure, as the man who raised him, it's not a welcome sight for you either.
No, sadly, whenever the Cards come to town, it will not be sunny in Cincinnati. And it used to be. So, that's unfortunate. I like Sonny Gray. He had a good tenure. He had a good tenure with the Cincinnati Reds. It was sad to see him go, and now that he's made his way back to the division, it does hurt a little bit. Hopefully, he doesn't cause too much trouble. Um, but yeah, as you pointed out, the St. Louis Cardinals are rebuilding this rotation. Certainly seems on paper as though that in a good and effective way. Hopefully that doesn't play out over the course of the season, because I can't stand them. But it it was a good move.
Was Shane Rose distraught? Do we have a Shane
Well,
Rose
I
temperature
didn't get any
check?
I don't remember getting comments specifically on Sonny Gray from Shane Rose yet. Maybe I'll have to ask for an
Yeah.
input.
If
Um,
I remember right, he's a Sonny Gray fanboy. So I just didn't know how hurt he was by Sonny Gray going to the dark side.
there was a lot of support for Sonny. No doubt about it. But I think that things move pretty fast in the MLB. There was a time where we were Trevor Bauer fanboys, and that ended rather quickly. There was a time where we were Yasiel Puig fanboys, and that ended pretty quickly. So it's just you gotta move forward, I suppose.
Sure. Well, Dennis, we've reached the hour mark. I don't know if there's anything else you want to cover tonight, but I think I've covered just about everything I want to. But I'll swing it back to you quick in case there's anything else that I've missed.
Villanova back in the rankings, back in the top 25.
How about it? Kyle
I
Neptune
just had to
finally
mention it.
showing up.
Right, we got a rebounding from a disastrous loss early in the season, just as I predicted. Unfortunately, not on air, so there's no proof, but just as I predicted.
Dennis, how about the University of Arizona Wildcats? Just a one man wrecking crew. Juggernaut, dare I say.
Looking good, looking very good.
Or,
A lot of excitement coming down the pipe in college basketball. I got to say that.
Dennis, would this podcast explode if there was a Wildcat Final Four or national championship?
Oh,
Would it explode?
oh, it might be an explosion. There might be some stuff on the line. I mean, even though the last time we had something on the line, it never came. I found the jersey. I
Yo,
found the
let's
jersey.
go!
Maybe we can work something out for its appearance on the podcast if I ship it to you now. I don't know. I don't
Per,
know. I don't know what the parameters are around that, but I did find it.
maybe Dennis, my punishment will be wearing the Reds jersey for the podcast, either preceding or following opening day. Perhaps, maybe
Okay,
that could be
that's
the
fair.
agreement. But I
I
also,
think that
I
that's
also don't,
maybe the best thing we can do.
I also don't want to take it from you for opening day because I'm sure that jersey has a lot of it's seen a lot of opening days. So I don't want to take it from you if that's the case.
That's true. It has seen a lot of opening days, but unfortunately, the Reds have not seen a lot of success recently. So, maybe it's time to switch it up anyway. I'll have to contemplate that. Maybe it's time for the old jersey to go into retirement.
A change of scenery could be necessary. Just like a forlorn player in a certain organization needs a change of scenery. Maybe the Cincinnati Reds jersey needs a change of scenery.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Man, last note here.
Sure.
I really hope we sign some starting pitching. This team is. I was just looking at it the other night. Current payroll is 20 million. It's incredibly young. We have so much cap space available to us this season, and if Nick Kroll doesn't do something, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed.
Dennis,
We have an opportunity in front of us to bring in some veteran talent, particularly to help bolster this team. The infield should be solid. The outfield, there's a couple of questions. Everybody's young, I get it, but they performed last year, and down the stretch, as we pointed out, it was a lack of ability to close games in the bullpen, and it was a lack of solid starting pitching. It was quite frankly, our offense just could not generate enough runs on a nightly basis to win games that we needed to win. And I hope that they do something about it.
well, hopefully that something isn't, signing the Will Myers of the world and the Mike Moustakises of the world. I mean, Dennis, those contracts are
Finally off the books.
legendary. The Shogo
I
Akiyamas of
think
the world.
I don't know if I'll be able to pull it up fast enough. I'm trying to remember I think the highest paid player on our roster is Hunter Green.
Okay, okay. Dennis, one
I'm
last thing.
pretty sure.
One last thing. Your thoughts on Joey Votto's departure from the Cincinnati Reds organization and the way in which it was done? Because I saw there was some, fans saying that Joey Votto was done dirty by the organization for being let go, and I didn't know what your thoughts on it were.
I don't think he was done dirty at all. And I also don't think that this is the end. I truly don't. There's a part of me that believes that this will be resolved by the start of the season. The fact of the matter was that the Cincinnati Reds could not afford to jeopardize their salary cap if they use it effectively, um, to pick up an option on a guy who just is not performing at a $20 million a year level. And does that mean they offered to bring him back at lower than that? I really hope so. I think he offers a veteran presence that would be valued and very much appreciated in the clubhouse. I think that he still has enough gas in the tank to contribute on occasion. and I think that it would be only right for him to have a a victory tour into the sunset sort of season. If that happens, I would be very happy. Um, Everyone seems to think that it's over. Maybe it is. And if that's the case, I will be sad, but I don't see how this organization was supposed to pay $20 million for Joey Votto next year. I just don't. That makes no sense. I mean, I love the guy, but we're also running a business here and we're trying to win games. And that's just quite frankly not an effective use of monetary resources. It's not.
Dennis, I can't say I disagree. Can't say I disagree. One last thing. Joey Votto for Hall of Fame? Question mark.
Oh, that's a whole nother pod, man. Me and I think we've talked about that before. I see the argument both ways. I'm on the fence about it. My personal bias definitely leans me towards saying that he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Speaking of which, did you see another name on the ballot this year?
Uh,
Another another high profile Cincinnati Red.
I did not.
None other than multiple Gold Glove second baseman Brandon Phillips, Derek, on the
Oh,
ballot.
okay.
Very intriguing. Very intriguing. BP was the heart and soul of the city for a few years, and I wish him luck in the Hall of Fame endeavors because I would love to see him get in. He was a special guy. Unfortunately, more defensively than offensively, and that probably hurts his candidacy a little bit. But man, he made some special plays.
I feel like I feel like Brandon Phillips is the Hall of Very Good.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know if it's quite Hall of Fame, but I think it's a Hall of Very Good. I'll be interested to see how it plays out.
I think if I'm being completely honest with myself, I was a little surprised to see his name pop. That wasn't something I was, you know, wholeheartedly pulling for or convinced should happen, but I'm happy to see it at the same time. So I guess in that respect I agree with you. He's a very good player. I was a little surprised that he's in consideration for Hall of Fame greatness, but he also has some of that personality. I'm assuming the writers love him. He's one of those guys that was just so easy to root for. Did things the right way and just always had a smile on his face and maybe that's part of what helps him out. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out, I guess.
I'm gonna do a quick check for Brandon Phillips' career WAR, just to get an idea. Just to get an idea. Career WAR 28.4. Dennis, 28.4. 4 times Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, 3-time All Star. Feels very Hall of Very Good to me. No, which is certainly not a knock on Brandon Phillips, but the way I sort of view the Hall of Fame is if this player was not in the Hall of Fame, could you tell the story of baseball without them? And I'm not sure you need Brandon Phillips to tell the story of baseball. Maybe to tell the story of the Cincinnati Reds.
There's the I was gonna say you can't tell the story. Maybe there's a line and I'm not the person to ask the question to because I know Cincinnati baseball. I can tell you that you cannot tell the story of Cincinnati baseball without
Sure,
Brandon Phillips.
sure, I
I'm
would agree.
1,000% convinced of that.
Yeah, I would totally expect to see Brandon
Story of
Phillips.
baseball.
Yeah, I would certainly expect to see Brandon Phillips wind up in the Cincinnati Reds, Ring of Honor, Wall of Fame, whatever they do. Uh, but I'm at this point am not quite convinced that Brandon Phillips is necessary for the story of baseball as a whole. But we'll see. We'll see. We will see. I'd give more of an argument for Joey Votto than I would Brandon Phillips, I think.
Yeah, I think that that's only fair. Just the longevity, the consistency, um,
I mean, how long can that man go
and
without an
long
infield
time
pop out?
production.
How long can
Oh my
Joey
gosh,
Votto go
that
without an
streak.
infield pop out? Crazy.
Years,
Yeah, yeah.
wasn't it?
It was years. It was almost I feel like it was almost like a
It was
career
like
long
three.
thing.
Yeah.
It was yeah. Regardless, it was wild. Uh
Let
now
me
now
see.
now I've got to look it up.
I know, right? I know.
Okay, so since 2010, he popped it up 7 times. Seven
Wow.
times. In 8 years. That was at 2018.
Okay.
Oh, pops out to
What it
first
was in
base.
to
Yes.
first base for the first time in his career in 2019.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. That's what I was thinking of. And
That's still insane. Not popping out to first base.
yeah, 6,829 plate appearances. Insane. And last year, he popped up to the pitcher for his first time in his career. And he only had 29 career pop outs in 15 years. As of not the 2023 season, but the 2022 season. So crazy, crazy. Some of the best bat on ball skills.
Very high on the yep, very high on the walks list, very high on the on base percentage list. Talking career wise, you know, solid number of home runs, solid number of everything across the board, not spectacular by any means, but I also think it's worth pointing out that and this is kind of my strongest argument for him is the walks and the on base percentage. But the fact that he did that thing, he did that without being one of the truly, most feared hitters in baseball. Typically you see those numbers inflate when you have Barry Bonds, when you have
Miguel
Hank Aaron,
Cabrera.
etc. Right, David Ortiz, even when you have those kind of guys that's truly, in a pitcher. I think Joey Votto did that to some extent, but what he mostly did was he just had a command of the strike zone. That was simply just a skill that he was really really good at, and I think that deserves some credit. And in its own way, really is quite the accomplishment. I don't know if it'll be enough to get in the Hall of Fame, but that would be my argument for it, is that he truly mastered the skill of getting on base.
Mastered the skill of getting on base and was in my opinion, certified terrorist in the city of Chicago, Illinois. Without a doubt, a legitimate terrorist for my childhood. But yeah, I think that'll pretty much wrap it up, Dennis, for us here tonight. Nice solid 1 hour pod. Just a little, surprise for the people. Hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. And hopefully Dennis will be able to join us Thursday, because me and Bob got something special in store for you Thursday if you're able to make it, Dennis. Got a thumbnail,
Oh no.
that I am itching to be able to use for Thursday. So hopefully you're able to make it.
All right. All right. That sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right, everyone. We won't do the normal, sign off with the socials and everything, just because it's not a normal pod. Unless Dennis, you want to take a stab at it.
Man, the last time it went so poorly. I think we've got garbage time takes on Instagram. We've got garbage time takes on YouTube, and we've got garb time takes on Twitter. And I think that's how it runs.
I
So,
think you nailed it.
Bobby's our man, but I think I've learned, a lesson learned from the first mistake. And yeah, no, please check us out on the socials. Please check out the videos on YouTube. Obviously, if you're seeing this, you're already here. But we've got some really good stuff up there, and looking forward to bringing more full pods and also hopefully more shorter episodes like this. I think this is a really enjoyable thing that maybe we can start sprinkling in as much as possible.
Sure, and it'll mean the normal pods might have a little more variety to them, since when I start going, I can get going. And if I get all of my takes out for certain things like Michigan football out of the way on a podcast like this, maybe the other ones are a little more evenly,
So
distributed in
we did all
terms of.
this. I mean, we did this in an hour, and we had a Bengals rant and a Michigan rant
Yeah,
that went on quite a while. So yeah,
correct.
that's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. We covered what, all of 4 topics: the Bearcats, the Bengals, Michigan, and baseball, and went an hour. So yeah, an hour well spent, I would say. But also, an hour well spent that can be better utilized in the regular podcast for, a little more variety, I think.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thanks again so much for watching. Look forward to seeing you Thursday. And I guess since we did the socials, we'll do the normal sign off too, because why not? So in three.
Two.
Peace.
Peace.